evening, everybody, and happy Father's Day. Welcome to this special edition of the Winter Meetings. We'll be partnering this with my other show, First Generation Dad. Will, my co-host for First Generation Dad, could not be here with us tonight. He is spending time with his family like a good dad. And Stefan is actually spending time with his family as well. Will not be joining us. It will just be me and Craig this evening. We're going to talk a little bit of baseball, and then we're just going to dive right in because our special piece tonight is I got to sit down this week and I got to talk with Michael Carreon, son of Camilo Carreon, who was a catcher for the Chicago White Sox, the Cleveland Indians, and the Baltimore Orioles. How's your Father's Day going, Craig?
Just for listeners, we both have families, but we're doing the show with our family support, in case anyone's wondering. Doing great. Had a great Father's Day. Spent time with my dad, and just a nice day. How about you?
Same. I had to work today, dealing with getting the interview for Michael edited. It's been a complete day of chaos, but I wouldn't trade it for a thing in the world because I think parenting as a whole is always just absolute chaos. I would. Yep. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Really quick, couple of things that I wanted to touch on before we dive into the interview with Michael is I saw today. I'm going to make sure I get his name right. So I'll talk about the other thing first. So Albert Pujols and the St. Louis Cardinals have been in Boston for a series against the Red Sox. Today, the Red Sox surprised Albert Pujols with a video tribute, and Big Papi came out to greet him and congratulate him on his pending retirement. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that, there hasn't really been very much of a deal made about the fact, Albert Pujols said this was his last season. And Boston is really the first team to do something on what is his farewell tour. Do you think other teams are going to pick it up now that Boston kind of started it?
I hope so. I mean, he's definitely earned that respect. I think the Giants will do something, and I think the Dodgers will also. I would be surprised if they didn't.
Honestly, I would too. I mean, even though, even with his time with them, I think that, they'll do something. They kind of have to, I feel like. There was, and I think it's great that people are respecting it because Pujols is, first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think anybody argues that. And I think that's, he's been a special piece of this game. He's mentored a lot of young guys, been a great piece in the clubhouse, and really helped the game from the inside, which I think is very, very important. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about, the Miami Marlins young prospect that just got called up, Gerard Encarnacion, got his first MLB hit today. And it was a grand slam in the Miami Marlins win against it was the Mets they were playing today, right?
I believe so, yes.
Man, if you get a chance, you go on to MLB's YouTube, Twitter page. It's all over it. ESPN's got a story on it. Get a chance to watch it. His dad was at the game too, which I think is really cool. How special would that be to watch your son get their first major league hit on Father's Day with you in attendance? Could you even imagine?
Well, just watching his father, it was just watching his reaction. That's what makes baseball so great. I mean,
absolutely.
He can now live the successes, and the challenges that his son's going to face in Major League Baseball. But he can celebrate and he can live the excitement that his son. I watched him running the bases. He was cool as a cucumber, acting like he'd done it before. No, he's a brand new rookie. But his dad was going crazy, and it was so much fun to watch that.
It really was. And I'm very, very happy for them to be able to have that moment. We saw Francisco Lindor. Was it last week before? His dad got to see him play in the majors for the first time. Which it's really special, and I think that's one thing that those of us, especially those of us that are born in the States, we take for granted is, a lot of these guys that come over from other countries to play baseball for us, they come over leaving their family behind and their entire world behind.
And they're teenagers. They're just teenagers.
Kids.
Come over.
They're kids.
Yeah.
You know, we got guys like, you know, I talk about him a lot just because he's one of my favorite catchers of all time. It's Salvador Perez. You know, there's a lot of people that don't think about the fact that Salvi has been with the Royals organization since he was 16 years old.
Yep.
And he spent so much time away from his family. You know, there's guys that haven't been back to their home country in 10 years or more.
Yep.
That's got to weigh on the mind, you know, at least I would think so. All right. So something special I'm going to do, because I didn't get a lot of response from the ideas that I had on the giveaways that I was going to do. When I talk about giveaways, I am talking about things that were given to me to give away to those of you that are watching, thanks to my wonderful sponsor, Gunslinger Soap. Gunslinger Soap is handmade soap without all the junk. It's great stuff. I've actually used their soap for years. And so the first giveaway that we are going to do, I am just going to throw this out here randomly. It is going to be their Gunslinger Soap, the original brand. This stuff is all made with is activated charcoal, handmade. Company is owned by a firefighter. And along with that is going to come one of their beard bar soaps. And on top of that, you can't even get this on their website right now because they're out. But I managed to bug the owner until he gave me a bottle of it. The bottle was for myself, but he sent me two, so I figured I'd share the love. A bottle of the Maverick beard oil. And this stuff is absolutely amazing. I have a very woodsy scent to it. I've been using it for a few weeks. My beard looks a lot better. He can confirm it. I used to look like it was like a rat now. Homeless person were fighting on my face. But the first person to comment is going to get this giveaway. I will ship this to you personally. This is completely free, courtesy of our friends at gunslingersoap.com. So first person to comment on the chat will get this giveaway pack. Please let us know you're here. Show some love today as we get started. And I'm really excited. This is the first time I've ever been able to do a giveaway in any of my podcasts. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And you know, give somebody a late Father's Day gift. Maybe somebody can give to as a late gift Father's Day gift because they forgot to get somebody something, or you know, share because it's great products. I have eczema. It's done really well for my skin. You know, it's great. I like sharing this stuff. This was entirely my idea to work with this company. I approached them because, like I said, I've been using it since 2016. But all right, nobody's really feeling like chat right now, so we'll kind of sit on it. First person to comment is going to win regardless. It's fine. It's fine. Everybody's waiting with bated breath for this riveting interview that I did with Michael Carreon. Also, some pictures are going to come up as we're talking that he sent me that I thought were really, really cool. Some history, some baseball history. And so we're going to go ahead and dive right on in. And again, first person to comment gets the Gunslinger Soap giveaway. And yeah, we're going to dive right on into this interview and get started. This was pre-recorded. Recorded this on Wednesday because he didn't have time to be here today because he is working. Because he is a firefighter and he's keeping people safe. And that is obviously more important than being live on a podcast. So let's dive on in. Son of MLB. Oh, wait. Chicago White Sox player Carreon. We're going to be talking about a lot. We're going to try that again. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special interview with Michael Carreon, son of MLB Chicago White Sox player Carreon. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today, a couple of different segments as we talk about his experience as a child of a pro baller and also the mental health side of life. Bringing both of my wonderful shows together. But as we dive in today, before we get started, I want to give a big special thank you to my sponsor, Gunslinger Soaps, gunslingersoaps.com. Their soaps are handmade soaps and beard products made without all the junk to pamper your skin. You can go to their website, gunslingersoap.com, and sign up to get 15% off of your first order and always get free shipping over $30. That's gunslingersoap.com. Your money with that company does go to charity, and it is owned by a firefighter. And speaking of firefighters, I am excited because my guest today is the fabulous Michael Carreon, who is also a firefighter down in Tucson. Is that right?
Yes, I just recently retired, but I still work as a first responder paramedic for the copper mines here in just south of Tucson.
Oh, right. How long have you been doing that?
Well, just had my 1 year anniversary during COVID. I retired once I was fully vested with Tucson Fire after 21 years as a firefighter and a medic here in Tucson. Then during COVID, when we were all in lockdown, I took some time off, and then I was offered a really good position here at the mines, where it's close to where I live, and I work as a paramedic first responder over there, and I'm really enjoying it right now.
That's fantastic. So is that going to be like where you're working in the mine as far as helping take care of the miners if there's an accident,
Yes.
Cave in or something? Okay, all right, well.
Yeah, we're actually trained rescue responders for any kind of work-related injuries, and then of course we always have medical injuries or medical emergencies such as high blood pressure, dehydration, especially with the heat. High blood pressure, diabetic issues. So I'm still doing exactly what I was doing on the streets of Tucson, but we're doing it like in the mine environment.
So as we transition to talking about your experience, so you're a kid, and your dad is a professional baseball player.
Yes.
So how much of your childhood did your dad play?
Well, when he did his was he 6 years with the White Sox total time?
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
Or maybe it was 7 years total major league time. But up until I was about 6 years old, he was actually in the major leagues. So being the oldest, I had the opportunity and the privilege to spend a little more time with my dad in the clubhouse and on the field. Enjoying some of that exposure to the major leagues. Of course, I was young at the time. I mean, we're talking quite a few decades ago, but the memories are still fresh. The smells, the environment, of course, all the significant memories that become part of your, just become part of your person.
Right.
Not to, my brothers and sisters, they were a little bit younger, so they didn't get all the exposure. But I think my dad had passed on a lot of his pictures to me because I was the oldest, and I happened to be there for quite a few of them.
Okay, yeah, that's very, and it's very interesting to see that. And is there anything that you can think of as far as like with what you remember as a kid? I know not to make you sound old, I know that was a while ago, but is there anything that you remember about growing up in that environment that really impacted, like, how you approached life, where you're at today, stuff like that?
Well, part of the memories that stay with you forever are like the smells and the noises. When you go into a locker room, a clubhouse back then, you had that smell of Ben Gay, you had the smell of pine tar, you had the smell of leather, and you never forget the smell of a Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
I remember walking into the clubhouse with my dad, and of course I was like his little shadow. Had my uniform on, by the way. I always had my uniform on. I was ready to play. Like when they first go in, they put their jewelry away, like in a kind of like a secured area, jewelry, wallets, cash, or whatever, and then they would go to their locker. And the clubhouse guys are phenomenal because they always make sure the cleats and the uniforms are hanging and ready for today's game, and all the distractions are minimized. So all the player has to do basically is walk in, change, and start swinging a bat. So and same with all the travel arrangements. There's a lot involved in the whole aspect of being a baseball player, but all those distractions are minimized, and all they have to do is focus on the field. All their focus is dedicated to the field and staying healthy. But as far as inside the clubhouse, the smells, the jersey clothing smells of the Ben Gay. They had a table set up full of snacks, chewing tobacco, and sunflower seeds, of course, bubble gum. And I always had an almond joy. My dad would make sure I got an almond joy.
There you go.
For some reason, I liked an almond joy, and I pretend it was a little thing of beech nut or whatever. And then they had to sign autographs. There was 2 or 3 dozen baseballs, like a couple cases that were like usually placed in the center of the clubhouse. And each player, as part of their commitment to the ownership, they had to go and sign all those baseballs. So they would spend a few minutes signing 2 or 3 dozen baseballs. And I think there was at least every game, or at least every home game that I remember. That was just part of their thing, where they had all these autographed balls. And back then they didn't shine with Sharpie pens, or sign with Sharpie pens. They shine with like a regular ballpoint pen, and then they kind of would varnish them to kind of preserve them.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
And once my dad was all dressed, I'd watch the whole procedure. It was kind of a ritual.
Yeah.
Sanitary socks and the stirrups and the uniforms and especially the sounds of the cleats were always exciting to me. And walking down the tunnel to the field was an amazing journey for me because you walk across these like wood planks, and then it would go into the dugout, and then you're on the field of some really fresh cut grass, and it was just amazing memories. The sounds of wood bats hitting baseballs was something you never forget.
It's I played up until my sophomore year of high school was the last year that I played, and it was primarily because I realized that I didn't have the discipline. I have my legs are like tree trunks, like kind of like yours, and yours for a lot of weightlifting and bodybuilding. We're going to talk about that stuff later too. But like for me, with the anxiety issues that I had as a kid, one of the ways that my anxieties would manifest is I walked on my toes, and I still catch myself doing it. And so my calves and my thighs are like tree trunks, so I could sit in that catcher squat all day. And the varsity coach loved it because I didn't care. I just get down in the squat perfect position. I didn't have to have one leg out on the knee or whatever, like some of these younger guys do. I just got in the squat, just all day. Didn't bother me. But when you get to when you get to that experience on the pro level, we know that there's a lot of times there's some positives and some minuses. And one of the things that they always talk about is the length of the baseball schedule. You've got 150 plus games. I think back then it was like 152, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, 150.
Yeah, something like that.
And one of the things that I've always been curious about, when growing up in that environment, what kind of an impact did that have on your family, especially with the length of the season of baseball?
Well, a lot of times people don't realize that there's a lot of heavy duty traveling involved. So I just remember going from different cities. We'd load up in a station wagon back then. We had an old Oldsmobile station wagon, and we would stay in hotels, and we would travel across country, going from like California to Chicago to Florida because spring training was in Florida. And I just remember that we were never really at one place too long. The days in Chicago, I don't remember quite as well because my mom was telling me that, my mom Dolores, by the way, was telling me that we stayed at a place called the Piccadilly Hotel during the season. So that's where all the players stayed, and she remembers, players like Louis Aparicio and Nellie Fox. All the players would stay there during the season. They wouldn't stay in these, like nowadays they stay in these mansions. They just rent the houses like an Airbnb type of thing. Right. But back then, even when the players traveled, they traveled with a roommate. It was like 2 to a room, Yeah, I remember my dad, he had roommates wherever they traveled. I don't remember him mentioning too much traveling by train, but he was back then he was a good looking guy. He had a suitcase. They had certain dress codes they had to abide with. Right. They were clean shaven, short hair. They had to represent the team in a professional manner. When they got off the buses and they went to the restaurants, they all had to have like a professional appearance. Not like nowadays where people can dress how they want and they're still part of the team. I took a little heat on one of my posts for one of those comments. I said something to the effect as he could be a fill-in for the next Barbarian movie or whatever, But so I took some heat for that one, but I was just trying to be honest. Back then my dad would have said no, because he didn't like long hair and the bearded approach when there were professionals, because they were. If you get paid to do a job, you're considered a professional,
Right. So
during, I think he played a total of 13 years of professional baseball, including his minor league time. One of my memories as a kid was whenever somebody else, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always told them I want to be a professional baseball player. So I knew at an early age, and even when I was like 2 or 3 years old, my mom was fascinated that here I was, a 2 or 3 year old, barely walking, but I had a glove and I was pretending like I was running around the bases in the living room, So yeah, at a very early age, we were exposed to the baseball, the gloves, the smells, the sounds of the game. My dad, of course, he traveled a lot. I remember as a kid sitting on the couch and my mom and him would be listening to the games on the radio back then. they didn't televise, a lot of games. So I remember, and there was something unique and special about listening to a game on a radio.
Yeah.
You can't see the plays, you can't see the replays, but you can hear the crowd, you can hear the crack of the bat, and there was one time I still remember this one where when my dad was with the Orioles, Bobby Floyd, he was struck in the head by a pitch, and the announcer was like, "Yeah, oh my gosh, his helmet went like 23 feet in the air. I hope he's okay." But you remember all those details.
It's and I think that I've always been a believer that listening to a baseball game on the radio is, outside of being at the game, baseball in its purest form.
Yes.
Good baseball broadcasters on the radio can make you see that game almost better than if you're just watching it on TV, because they have to work so hard to paint a picture.
Yes.
And so I've always respected quality broadcasts. Like for myself, I've been a Red Sox fan since I was a kid. My grandmother was raised in the Northeast, and she was the one that got me into baseball. And so I was, that was where my focus always was. And then unfortunately she passed in the summer of 2004, right before the Red Sox would break the curse of the Bambino. So that was just one of those things. Like, it's, when you're brought up around it, it's a little easier to see the picture, but for the normal fan, just listening to it on the radio, like it gives you so much more of an image of what's going on.
Right.
And now that I think it's technology is so amazing. I can go onto a website and click a link, and I'm listening to the Red Sox radio broadcast. I'm in Phoenix.
Right.
You can listen to the White Sox radio broadcasts from where you're at in Tucson. Like it's, that's one of the amazing things about technology that has helped. I think it's good for the game if it was used properly.
Yes, I agree. When I was growing up, I was from Southern California, and my grandfather always had Vin Scully on the radio. So the Dodgers, Vin Scully, that's Hall of Fame material there. As I got older and I started to watch some of the televised games, a couple of my favorites were Joe Morgan and Ralph Kiner. Both of them I thought were very courteous to the ball players in general, and they had their baseball knowledge. I didn't care for some of the announcers that would start to kind of bash some of the ball players. There was a few, I don't want to name any names, but there was a few that I didn't care for that were kind of objective or subjective, I should say, towards certain players. But the ones that stayed neutral, they didn't degrade anybody, and they were professional. That's why I really did like Joe Morgan and Ralph Kiner, and of course Vin Scully.
Vin Scully is, I think he's definitely an icon.
Yes.
And like for me, those you talked about those subjective or objective base, those baseball announcers that aren't as neutral as most of us prefer when it comes to a national broadcast.
Yeah.
Like I remember, because I was living in Kansas City in 2014 and 2015. So when the Royals made that World Series run and lost against the Mets, and then the next year they win, Joe Buck is still a swear word in Kansas City 7 years later, because of the bias that he showed towards Madison Bumgarner in the World Series in 2014 when Kansas City lost. No, it's Kansas City lost to the Giants.
Yes.
In that series, and Joe Buck's affinity for Madison Bumgarner is announcing during that series. Like, he's more hated in Kansas City than the Raiders at this point, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But, but it's tough. Think about we think about the pressure of Joe Buck having called the last 30 or 40, the World Series last 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. Even Jim Cotton was under the fire recently.
Yeah, I saw that, and
he made a comment, but he made it maliciously or anything.
Right, and I think that Nestor Cortez handled that amazingly, because we know you get to some of those older guys and they just say stuff that they think is funny. That filter kind of breaks when you get to that age.
Yeah, and Nestor had a really good, really awesome, respectful reply.
It's and he's definitely it pains me to say Nestor Cortez And as a Red Sox fan, Nestor Cortez is one of the shining pitchers of the year, especially for young guys.
Oh yeah.
And then what Aaron Judge is doing, offensively and defensively right now for the Yankees, like I'm happy for the guy because he gambled on himself, and it looks like it's gonna pay off.
Yes.
But at the same time, does it have to be the Yankees?
Yeah. Then you get him and Stanton together. It's like the Bash Brothers all over again.
Right. And I mean, you look at the Dodgers, that lineup, if it was actually firing on all cylinders, that lineup is Murderers Row 2.0.
Yeah, since we're talking baseballs, what's surprising me is kind of the downfall of the Angels right now, So that's kind of a weird thing with Trout and the Japanese player that they have.
Shohei,
he was like a 5-star All-Star not too long ago, and Trout's been one of the best players in baseball for the last several years,
And I was looking at the numbers, and I mean, once they started winning games, Trout kind of he started to get back in the right direction. I think he's still got some work to do.
Yeah.
But I hate to say it, but with Trout, I almost wonder if he's already to the point where he needs to be a bat off the bench, kind of like what Pujols did.
Yeah, he might be. He looks fantastic, but they start to lose their bat speed,
It happens.
It's like Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson looked phenomenal his whole career, but then he started to lose that hand-eye bat speed, and then he didn't want to retire from baseball. Baseball retired him, he said.
It happens. There's a difference between heart and ability that some athletes get a disconnect in. Like you look at Drew Brees when he was quarterback for the Saints, his arm retired 3 years before he did.
Yeah.
It's there's just so many things that that happen, and the disconnect between physical and mental. And that can almost be a difficult thing to overcome in and of itself, because you want to do it, but then the ability goes away, and you're like, was I ever really the best? Was I ever really deserving to be at this level? Right. And that self-doubt has got to be struggling. So, and when I was talking with Craig, and he was telling me about you when when we first started talking about doing this, I learned you actually had a scholarship to play baseball and turned that down to go into the Navy. Is that right?
Yes. I was going through what most 18-year-olds, some of the anxieties and the life choices that a lot of 18-year-olds face as they're approaching graduation from high school. So in 1979, I was in Rincon, and I had a scholarship offer to the University of New Mexico to play baseball. I remember the day vividly when my dad took me to the University of Arizona Wildcat Stadium, and New Mexico was playing their opening game there. And I got to meet the coach and some of the teammates, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. They're going into the hotel after the game. And I said, this is about as close to Major League Baseball as I can get at this point in my life, because it was very similar. They travel and they play for like 3 games, and then they go back to their home, wherever they're from, So I was excited about that. At the same time, I started talking to some military recruiters, and for some reason, I was attracted to the structure of the military. There was something about it, making your bed nice, dressing appropriately, and training yourself to do a lot of various things. And so that part of me, there was kind of a little bit of fire that lit in me when I went to go talk to the various branches of service. So I had those going on at the same time as I was considering the scholarship. And of course I was working, but I didn't see myself working and going to a community college part-time at that point in my life. I was the oldest, and I wanted to make a decision. And a lot of us face those big decisions at a young age,
Yeah, I've always thought it was interesting how we expect 18-year-olds to decide what they want to do for the rest of their life when some of them don't even know their ass from a hole in the ground.
Right.
I know I was one of those that didn't at that time.
Yeah.
Hey, go to school. Well, I don't know what I want to do yet. That's okay. Just go to school.
Right.
$100,000 in debt later, they still don't know what they want to do.
Right.
And but a lot of, but I could also circling back to what you're talking about with going into the military. You talked about like the routine and stuff like that. I would have to expect, and especially with growing up in the home of a professional athlete, that routine and that structure was probably pretty present in your childhood, and so there might have been a connection there. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, because there was a lot of preparation and there was a lot of, like going back to my Little League days and when me and my two brothers were playing Little League, we got one of the most exciting things that happened to us is when we got our uniform during the preseason practices, and they were like, "Hey, we got your uniforms." And of course, I wanted a number like Roberto Clemente or something like that. And then we had our cleats and our gloves, and everything was part of preparing for the big game, And then we'd have our game, and then we couldn't wait for the next game. We'd go to practice, go through the motions, but you have to prepare. All this preparation is what makes you a winner for the big game. You see these ball players now, and even back then, they're taking maybe 1,000 baseball cuts of warm up before the actual game. So it's all part of a routine and preparations. If you go to a game now, they're taking infield, they're taking some grounders with the coaches hitting with the fungo bats, and they're making their throws to first. And my dad, as a catcher, I always watched them when they threw it around the horn. I was like, man, they just do it like a rhythm, They catch it, they throw it to third, they throw it to second, they throw it to short. That's when they say around the horn, it looks pretty cool,
That's definitely an interesting thing to watch, and especially when you think about the size of the field that professionals play on, and and being able to just accurately and with emphasis get that ball 90 feet in just a couple of seconds.
Yes.
It all comes from the fact that you've done it a million times. You stand there in practice and just around and around and around. Oh, it's back to home. We're going to second. Second's going to first. First going to third. Third's going to first. You're just going back and forth, just working on all those different connections. And then you remember that the shortstop's there, and you got to give them the ball sometimes too. There's just those things, and it's about that rhythm and routine to get to that level. That's why it looks so easy for these guys. Yes. When you've done something a million times, of course it's easy.
Right. They call it the muscle memory,
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
What I was going to ask was, when you look at like your interaction with ball as a kid and growing up, what kind of an impact did your dad being a pro baller have on your development and on the expectations that people had of you and all of that?
Well, I wanted to say that my dad never forced anything on us. He always had a gentle approach. He never said, "Hey," he was not one of those dads in the stands that were yelling at their kids or anything like that. He was more quiet. He would stand off in the outfield because he didn't want to be any kind of a distraction for us during the game. But we knew he was there, so we knew we had to perform so that my dad would approve, basically, But he wouldn't yell at us or say, "Hey, we're going to go home and throw the ball after the game." But what he did all the basic things, like you said, over and over. He taught us how to throw it. We'd get a ball. He wanted us to throw overhand. He didn't want no sidearm stuff. He wanted us to grab the ball across the seams. And we were practice going from the glove to the ball and grabbing across the seams so that when you throw it, the ball doesn't tail away. He wanted us to catch with two hands, and we did that over and over. He didn't want none of the showboating with one hand. And when we were swinging, he would say, "Hey, let me watch you swing." And so he would watch our swing, and he goes, "No, I don't want you to copy anybody. Don't copy." He wouldn't name any names, but of course, we wanted to hit like Willie Mays and Roberto Clemente, and there's certain guys that they have these unique stances. He goes, "I don't want you to copy anybody. I want you to be yourself." So then we had to just work on our holding the bat right with the handle, the same routines that you practice over and over. Watching the pitcher, stepping into the ball, and none of this leg cocking stuff like some of the home run hitters do now. You're laughing because you were one of those guys that cocked your leg, like Darryl Strawberry or something.
No, I watch a lot of players do it today, and it drives me nuts too. Because if you have to cock your leg to get power, you need to get back in the gym. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like Darryl Strawberry. Remember a while back, Andre Galarraga?
Yeah.
He had like an open stance, and I'm like, how the heck? He said he could see the ball better when he had an open stance, because he's looking straight forward, like Rod Carew,
Devers is the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, you could see the ball better with a certain stance. But guys like Julio Franco, I mean, look at how he had his bat. His bat was cocked way over his head, and that guy was awesome. I got to see him and meet him a little when he was here with Cleveland. But he was amazing that he played for so long, But he had one of those unique stances. But my dad always instilled into us to be yourself. He was never going to yell at us at a game or embarrass us in front of other people. He wanted us to practice the same good habits over and over. So he believed in hard work, consistency, and then just do your best out on the field. If you make a mistake, that's fine as long as it's not like a mental mistake. Like you're supposed to know what you're going to do with the ball if the ball is hit to you before the pitcher delivers it.
Right.
So if the ball is hit to me, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to gun him down to third, or I'm going to hit my cutoff man, or see what we always should know what we're going to do before the pitch is thrown. So avoiding mental mistakes was kind of not acceptable. But as far as the human mechanics, those are the things that you practice every day. Even when my brother was playing in the major leagues, I mean, they go out there hours before the game, and they're taking tons of batting practice. So that's all the things that the fans don't see during game time. It's live, but these guys have already been practicing for 2 hours.
Yeah, and that's the thing is baseball is a game of failure. And most professional sports really are, I think. And so, it's more about being able to understand and learn. And when you're at the plate, if you had a 6-pitch strikeout, okay, were you working on the timing for those 6 pitches so when you face that batter again in a couple of innings, you can make contact?
Yes.
And just developing and what are you watching when you're sitting in the dugout watching that pitcher do so that you can help your teammates get their timing?
Right.
There's so much that goes into that experience as a player at any level.
Yeah.
That's insane. So, you as you look at the game the way it was, when you think about the game the way it was when your dad played versus the way that things are seen now, the way that things are done now. Do you think, obviously there's some things that they've gone soft on, some guys have long hair and beards and stuff like that. But is there anything that you think that's changed over the last, we'll say 30, 40 years that you think has been detrimental to baseball?
Well, it's gone through there's been a lot of evolving going on, to be honest with you, because I grew up with it. Watching the players, they all wore the same black spikes, They all wore the same black spikes with a tongue flap over. They had their number and their name on there. Most of them carried 3 gloves and 3 spikes with them at all times. So I asked my dad, why do you carry 3 gloves with you and 3 spikes? Well, one's my gamer, one's my backup, and then I'm breaking in my third one, So that's how the owners would supply him with 3 gloves and 3 cleats. So he had his game cleats, he had his backup cleats, and then he had one that he would break in. And he said sometimes he would have the bat boys and the clubhouse guys wearing his cleats to break them in. So that way they would soften up a little bit, before the games, and he actually wore them. So I thought that was kind of cool that he would ask the bat boy to wear his spikes or whatever, or to use his glove to play catch with, so it would kind of loosen things up a little bit. But
the glove to play catch with, that would make sense. But having somebody else wear my cleats, it's like, hey, your feet need to hurt for a while so that they don't hurt mine.
That's kind of how it went. But and of course, the owners, they supplied each player with their custom baseball bats. So they all kind of wore the same uniforms, the same cleats, the same clean cut, clean shaven approach to the game back then, so that they were all kind of uniform. But on the other hand, I've taken some heat over my respect for that, because they were saying that's because basically they were under the control of the owners. The owners said, hey, this is what you're going to wear. If you don't like it, we'll replace you or whatever. And we're only going to pay you $12,000 a year. Back then, that was kind of like the average salary. It was 12 to 15,000. And we're not going to pay you in the off season. You're going to have to go to either winter ball or you're going to have to get another job, because that's a whole different story. But my dad used to have these different odds and end jobs during the off season, like moving furniture and stuff like that. He had a couple of other big job offers. They had offered him a position to work for Campbell Soup, and all he had to do, they would fly him back and forth to Chicago, and all he had to do was make appearances and stuff like that. But during the off season, he wanted to stay home, either in California or Arizona. But I think some of the things that changed with baseball is, I know Curt Flood had a lot to do with the free agent market. And also, he didn't want to be committed to one team. He wanted to be able to test the market, perhaps, and get an increase in salary. The other thing that happened was Reggie Jackson. Reggie said, "Hey, I'm bringing 50,000 people to the game. I want a cut of that too." They're when I'm not playing or when I'm not at home, you're only making 30,000 people come to the game, but when I'm playing, it's up to 50,000 a game. He goes, somehow him and his agent negotiated an attendance clause. So then and like in the '70s, you started seeing the salary started to increase, and then it started to become more empowering to the players and the players union against the owners, including TV rights like nowadays.
Right. Do you think that the transition for power, if you will, from being completely on the ownership to the players having more of a legitimate seat at the table, do you think that has helped things? Do you think it's hindered? What do you think?
Well, I think the salaries that went like through the roof, because now we're talking about Aaron Judge making like 300 million.
Yeah.
When a brain surgeon doesn't even make a third of that.
Right.
So I mean, but of course you're talking entertainment. When my brother was playing, he said, "Well, we're kind of considered entertainers, like Tom Cruise." Like when the Mets were in town, you wanted to see certain ball players. I know I wanted to watch Darryl Strawberry.
Right.
I didn't want to see him taking a day off. I would have been pissed off. But I mean, like Tom Cruise, for example, he's got that new Top Gun movie, but he makes a lot of money and he's really not skilled other than acting, right? But like Aaron Judge, he's looking at a huge, probably a record-breaking salary. They remove the salary caps. The owners probably aren't very happy about it, but to them it might be an investment. So there's still a huge business. I think it's a very, very strong business aspect going on here. What I don't like to see, Tony, is what I don't like to see is somebody get locked in for a large salary. Like let's say Robinson Cano, for example.
Yeah.
He gets locked in for like $23 million, and he produces 1 year, and then he gets banned for substance abuse. And then once he's clean from the substance abuse or the steroids, once he's clean, then he can't. Then he's struggling to play ball. Now he's in Mexico somewhere trying to get his way back.
Yeah. He made his premiere in that AAA team on SpongeBob night. I saw that picture. I thought it was fantastic. I want that jersey.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying here? We're gonna sign this guy for a guaranteed contract, and then he produces 1 year, maybe, and then they're paying him off for the other 2 years.
It's Robinson Cano is a great example. There's a lot of skepticism around Garrett Cole right now because he signed this massive deal with the Yankees, but as soon as the rules, they started actually enforcing the foreign substance rule.
Right.
Garrett Cole's pitching just as a whole just went down. It free falled.
Right.
And he has now, over the last couple of games, he's starting to get back into his form. I think he's figured out how to pitch without spider tag.
Yeah.
But it's the Yankees spent a lot of money on him.
Right. Yeah, I remember when Steinbrenner. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was like, go ahead. You're good.
No, I just remember when Steinbrenner said, "Oh yeah, let's get this luxury tax thing out of the way, and I'll pay you your $10 million, and I'm going to spend whatever I want on the team."
And that's the thing, though, is with baseball, a lot of these large market teams, they don't look at the salary cap as the salary cap as a line that they can't pass. They look at it as like, oh, okay, well, I have an extra $2 million in taxes I have to pay to the league this year. It's
Right.
$1 billion business. That's pennies in the bank to most of those guys.
Right.
They added with the new CBA, they added another luxury tax line and fine threshold, and it's literally being called the Steve Cohen line because the Mets blew past it like it was nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's it's very interesting to watch. And as we talk about baseball, there's been a lot of conversations, like especially during the last CBA recently. Kind of touched on it a little bit earlier about ownership in baseball. From your perspective, having a little bit more of an inside track, do you think that the behavior and the expectations of ownership now, the way that as fans we expect ownership to be better than some of the things that they've been, we'll say, accused of in the past?
Yeah.
Do you think that the behavior and the direction of ownership of organizations as a whole do you think it's better? Do you think it's worse? Do you think is there anything really that's being missed that needs to be fixed? What do you think?
Well, that's a very interesting topic. I was looking at researching the history and the current affairs of Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the White Sox. So the owner of the White Sox, not only does he own the White Sox, but he owns the Chicago Bulls, and he owned the Chicago Bulls back when Michael Jordan was there. So to me, he's a decorated owner, right?
Right.
He has a lot of power. So if he holds on to Tony La Russa, that's probably what he's going to do, even if the fans disagree. Because he has that loyalty and that history with Tony La Russa. He has that bad feeling. Hey, when I fired Tony the first time, he went off and won 3 World Series. But a lot of people are saying that modern baseball has passed, that Tony has missed the bus for modern baseball,
Mhm.
So, and he is 77 years old, but he's got about $3 million on his contract for like the next 2 years. So I don't know if Reinsdorf's going to want to just cash out and do something with Tony then, but I think they have a lifelong friendship involved. And I think with the older guys, there's still a lot of loyalty there behind the lines, behind the scenes.
Right. It's when I think about Tony, because like I know that on last week's episode of Winter Meetings, I kind of unloaded on Tony La Russa. And it's purely because, when you look at the experience that he has in the game, there's people that don't realize that his first head coaching gigs was with the AA White Sox in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And then I believe it was 79, he got the head coach nod to coach the White Sox.
Right.
And he coached them until I believe it was 85 before he went to the A's.
And yes.
The A's for 10 years before he went to the Cardinals. And then we get this 10-year gap and we're back with the White Sox. This is his second stint. In the time that he was with the White Sox, he had two losing seasons in that stretch where he was with the White Sox.
Yeah.
And then he has only 2 in the 10 years with the A's. He only had 2 or 3 in his time with the Cardinals.
Right.
Retired, walked into the sunset in 2011 after the Cardinals World Series championship.
Yeah.
And then we get this 10 years back. He's the baseball, and especially that roster that the Cardinals had in 2011. It was definitely a much older feel to, versus, where baseball is today. And that gap.
Right.
I think that I legitimately believe that if Tony La Russa had been coaching through that entire time and seen how baseball has evolved,
yes,
I do believe that he might be a different coach. And because, baseball was a different game in 1979 versus what it was when he left in 2011.
Right.
So he had to have at least somewhat been growing with the times in that regard. And yeah, he's a little bit harder on the unwritten rules than some people prefer.
Yeah.
Which is really one of the bigger downfalls of Tony La Russa right
now. Yeah.
But back then, that's what was needed.
Right.
And
back then, he could follow his gut feeling, and whatever happens. And he's trying to use that approach now, but it kind of backfired him the other day when he walked that guy with 2 strikes on him, and then the next guy hits a home run, and then that's kind of tough, What I think, if they're going to keep Tony, what they might need is maybe a younger, a very sharp bench coach that could kind of be his assistant, Now, whether Tony listens to him or not, I don't know, because he's got a lot of ego stuff going on there.
Yeah.
But if he had a younger bench coach that was, like maybe AJ they're talking about maybe bringing AJ on, somebody who's more in tune or more in alignment with modern baseball, that might assist Tony if Tony listens.
And that's the thing is, we all have those things where we get to a point where we're experienced enough that we know what we're doing, that it is a little bit harder for us to see, things need to change or growth or whatever. But to put this in, but to be in the to get to that point, it takes a lot of knowledge and confidence. And I do feel bad for Tony, because he's got to be realizing that things are not going the way that they should.
Right.
And his methods aren't working. And so I do feel bad for him in that, because he's 77. He's going to have to retire soon if he doesn't get fired.
Right.
That's got to be hard on somebody.
Yeah, it's got to be hard. And the other day, he did kind of go to social media saying that he felt like he was fully accountable. He's the captain of the ship, and he was taking responsibility for that. So that was kind of a graceful thing. But people are still asking. We realize that you understand that you're accountable, but we need to make some big changes right now because it's like Yogi used to say, it's getting late fast. Uh,
I've said multiple times over the last few weeks, when you look at that White Sox roster, yeah, there's some injuries there, especially on the pitching side, but they should be at least putting pressure on Minnesota for the division.
Yes. So even though they're flirting with 500, they're not putting pressure on the Twins.
And I think that's the hard part, is especially when you look at the results that they had last year. He still had a winning season last year. They won the division last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so to have this much of a pivot turn, and for me, I lost respect for Tony La Russa when he chastised that rookie last year for hitting that
3-0 pitch.
That 3-0 pitch home run.
Yeah.
That was a rookie that had his shot. Come on. Every single one of us would have taken that gift over the plate and set a yard. Every single one of us would have done that.
Yeah, but the guy was never the same after that.
And he 2 weeks later, that player was down in the minors.
Yeah.
Hasn't been back up.
No, he struggled.
He struggled after that. Leadership, and especially with the modern players, leadership impacts results.
Yeah.
As a manager, you're managing egos and personalities more than strategy, because that's what your bench coach and your position coaches are for more than anything else.
Right.
You're managing egos.
And bring the best out of people.
And his older approach, it's a lot harder to do that than your modern managers. I think that's why Joe Madden started to struggle in LA, because you've got a lot of younger guys, and Shohei is a pretty good guy. Mike Trout's a pretty good guy, but you can't tell me there's not egos and personalities that you have to manage in that clubhouse.
Right. Yeah.
And he's on the line. Joe Girardi, the Phillies, another prime example. And so, all right, so we're going to transition from baseball here over to talking about some stuff, that you and I are both passionate about, mental health. And so my first question to you is, because if I remember quickly, like what Craig was telling me, like you went into the Navy, but you ended up being a SEAL. Is that correct?
No, I didn't. I worked in the Navy SEAL division after my 2 deployments.
Mm-hmm.
I went in and I was on a ship, and I was in Northern California, in the Alameda County area.
Okay.
And during my first 3 years, I made 2 deployments to the Persian Gulf, and then I made some rank, and I decided, I talked to my mom and dad. I said, hey, I could get out after 3 years, but I'm doing pretty well here. I'm making a decent living. I've got my medical and dental insurance. They're offering me a career. They were even offering to send me to officer school because I was knocking out some college, and they were like, yeah, if you re-enlist, we'll send you to officer school. And so I went ahead and re-enlisted, and I went to San Diego, and then I was working in Coronado for my last couple of years there. And I kept going to school, and I said, I really like the confidence and the empowerment that education has given me. So and they were paying for it too. So I went ahead. Yeah. So I realized how important education was. Back when I was 18, I didn't realize it at the time. Going to university in New Mexico to play baseball was what my goal was. But studying and going to school was not my goal at that time.
Right.
But when I was in the military, I saw these guys that were educated. They were getting better pay, better jobs, better assignments. And I said, man, that's what I would like to do. So I went down to San Diego. I kept knocking out my school, came home, and I was an E6 after 8 years. And I decided, I'm going to get out. I'm going to try something different. And that's when I ended up focusing on becoming a firefighter and a paramedic. So
were there things that you picked up in your time in the Navy, and because especially being a firefighter or first responder, like you come across things that just are mentally held. Was there anything from your time, growing up with your dad as a professional athlete, your time in the military and stuff like that really helped with the mental side of what you did as a first responder?
Well, usually one thing that I saw as a first responder, because we saw a lot of bad calls between,
Right.
there was, shootings and overdoses and suicides and domestic violence calls that we would go on. Um, and even just medical, like it was time for somebody's time to die, like a cardiac arrest or something like that. So what I realized is, as a first responder, paramedic, and a firefighter, you're not going to be able to save everybody if it's their time. You do the best that you can, and if they don't make it, then you can't dwell on the fact, well, if I would have done this, I would have done that. I mean, sometimes there are cases where you could have done that, but if you've done the best that you can, you started your IV, you put them on oxygen, you did compressions the best that you could, then you had to kind of like detach yourself and say, hey, I did the best I could, and I can sleep at night knowing that I did the best that I could.
Right. Leave it all in the field type of mentality.
Yeah. So you focus on your task to do the best you can, stop the bleeding, give your medicines, give your IVs, give your transition to the hospital exactly what you know. But you can't save everybody. There's going to be people that you're going to go on a call and they've been down too long and there's no way they're going to come back. Unfortunately, that happens to teenagers. It happens to young kids. I mean, I've seen some shootings and killings over things that were meaningless.
Yeah.
And that's not how that day was supposed to go. So as far as going home, what I found that helps for me, and this is just my own opinion, what has helped for me is I go to the gym almost every day. That's my outlet. So I go to the gym. It's part of my lifestyle. It's part of my day. And I just feel better. I'm not trying to do it to be a bodybuilder or power lifter. I do it for my mental wellness, my mental well-being. And if you want, it's not selfish in a way if you call it self-care, so
right.
I do my self-care probably every day. I don't schedule any days off unless I'm really tired or I've got something else that came up. But I call them my mental wellness self-care therapy session, basically for 45 minutes. That's how long I work out.
Yeah, we all get that energy out in different ways. Sometimes like for me, sometimes that's therapy. I've got a therapy session in the morning. Sometimes it's just going out for a run, going camping, working out. It's that outlet is what's important. Was there outside of working out, has there been any other outlets that you've used that have really helped you manage the mental stress of the things that you do?
Well, there were some times where I went to some like group therapy sessions, and I think just venting like that, it kind of diffuses a lot of the built up resentment and anxiety that people can have. Where you're kind of speaking about your situation under anonymity, like you're anonymous. Nobody knows who I am when I walk in. I say, hey, my name is Mike. They say, hi, Mike. And that's all they need to know. Yeah. And then you say, I'm kind of dealing with this right now. And that does kind of de-escalate, diffuse the situation. Even if it's just for the day, that could be a good thing, because then you have the next day. Because you can't solve some internally scarred wounds in one therapy session, Right. Sometimes it takes a daily effort, just like Alcohol Anonymous, drug addictions. It's a daily effort,
It's, I think there are so many people that when we're dealing with mental health issues, they feel like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy and this is all going to be gone. That's very rarely how it works.
No, that doesn't work.
And when you put that, and it's unfair to yourself to put that expectation that you can fix a major issue that quickly.
Right.
And the strength that it takes to do those things, whether it's individual or group therapy.
Yes.
Is that takes a lot. So it's, respect for being able to do that. Is there anything that you can think of, like, especially, from the outside looking in and everything that you've gone through, is there anything that you think could be better as far as the support that firefighters and other first responders get to be able to effectively manage their mental health?
Well, like right now, they had, when I left the fire department, they had a counselor on hand that was available 24/7, because, we never know when an emergency is going to happen. We never know what type of emergency is going to happen. So that was nice. And I've used that counseling service when I was going through some rough times. So that's one thing, that they make somebody a professional available to you, like a phone call away. So the other thing is, the individual has to kind of take some responsibility for their well-being.
Mhm.
So they can't expect others to lift them out of this dark place, you know.
Yeah.
They can ask for support, they can ask for help, they can ask for listeners, but ultimately you have to decide, hey, either I'm going to deal with this, I'm going to try to meet it head on, or I'm going to take baby steps. But somehow I'm going to climb out of this dark place, and I want to be who I'm supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be free. I want to be who I'm supposed to be. I want to serve my purpose, whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a good son, or whether it's being a paramedic or a firefighter, or whatever your calling is. You know, you want to feel free to be you. You know.
Absolutely. And you know, that ability to actually have, you know, be yourself. There's so many people like, oh, I don't need that time. Yes, everybody needs that time.
You do, yeah.
And one other question that I wanted to ask you, you know, because I know you're a parent as well, right?
Yes.
And so as you know, you think about your experience growing up as the child of a professional athlete, was there anything that you experienced there that impacted your approach to parenting your children?
Well, I've talked to some of my kids about this, and just looking back at my own childhood, I think the best teacher in the world is somebody that teaches by example and not with words. I think words are shallow in a sense. Uh, you can say, "Hey, I love you," or "Let's do this, let's do that," but if you don't, you watch their actions, and if they don't align properly, then it's kind of hard to believe in that. So if you watch somebody who does a lot of things, you just watch them. Like, I hope that my kids see me go to the gym. They see me working hard at work. They see me living a simple life. And I hope somehow that'll help guide them in their decision making in their futures. My dad was a simple person as well, even though he had this tremendous athletic world class ability as a major league baseball player. Um, when he was home, he used to like to read the sports page, and of course we used to watch sports, and he enjoyed watching us play Little League. So he liked to keep things simple, and now that I'm older, I like the simplicity of life versus a long list of things that I just think I have to do. Because do you really have to do it? No, you don't have to do it. Maybe spending time with your loved ones is more important. So time is a valuable thing that it's a valuable thing that people don't realize, that we don't always have a certain amount of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not a given. Appreciate the simple things, because when the time comes, that's what you're going to be focused on most.
Yes.
Um,
Well, when growing up with my dad being, a major league baseball player, I did get to see after his major league baseball days that there was some pretty big challenges that he was facing. Because then you become a normal person, you become a normal worker, even though you're still a major league baseball player, and you have 5 kids to support. So I can see. Before this interview, I was thinking about the line on the Field of Dreams when Kevin Costner sees his dad taking off his catching gear at the end, and he sees him in his prime, right? And he goes, "Hey, that's my dad, and before life has worn him down." And because what happens is, as we get older physically, naturally, anyways. But there's just things that happen in life that kind of tear at your heart, tear at your body, and then you start doing comfort eating and other bad things and trying to survive, and then you don't look the same as you did when you were 21 years old.
Right.
So that's part of it. But when I try to tell, or I try to lead by example now, is when people ask me, "Hey, you're 61 years old. How can you work out like you do and train as hard as you do and still stay healthy?" And I try to stay positive. That's just part of my lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
I tell them, well, number one is I don't drink and party. So I don't drink and party. I make sure I get my rest, and I'm old enough to know better, basically. Well, they kind of see that and they say, "Man, this guy knows what he's talking about."
a healthy lifestyle is definitely something that takes a choice, and especially with all of the influences that we see around us, telling us, oh, hey, go have a beer, go,
Yeah.
go out and party with your friends. It's okay to stay out till 1 in the morning. Every once in a while, sure.
Yes.
Every once in a while, sure.
And yeah, and I want to clarify. I'm not meaning to throw any jabs out there because
Right.
I still have a cold beer when I go see a Journey concert or something like that.
Hey, don't stop believing. That's all I'm saying. But that's the thing. Moderation in moderation is key with those different things. If you're going to partake, but it's about making a consistent choice on a regular basis to go to the gym, get out and go for a run, go for a walk, whatever your physical activity is going to be, to keep yourself in a position, because we're all going to die at some point, but do you want to get rolled into the grave in a wheelchair, or have to be thrown in, or do you want to slide in with flames coming behind you and rock music playing? Like, which way are you going?
Hey, Tony, I always tell people when I go out, I'm going up guns a blazing, man.
You know what? That song Blaze of Glory. I can't remember who.
It was
the Motley Crue song, isn't it?
Bon Jovi. That's one of my workout songs.
Yeah. It's
wanted dead or alive or whatever.
Oh yes. Well, and that's one of my favorite songs to do at karaoke. Bon Jovi is right in that perfect range for me. I can always feel it every time.
Well, sometimes if you ever see my videos, I'll attach a 30-second song, and that's one of the songs that I use. But Tony, I wanted to mention a couple things.
Sure.
My brother Manny and I are really close.
Mm-hmm.
He's my younger brother. My dad got to spend more time with him on the playing field as a little league coach while I was in the Navy, because I was already gone. Mm-hmm. And so they had a different kind of a relationship. But Manny just flew in from Portland yesterday, and he got to see the old Portland Beaver baseball stadium where my dad played at. So I wanted to mention that because he said it's a pretty awesome facility. And now they play soccer there. And I said, well, what was the weather like? And he said, well, it was green, it was cloudy, it was about 80 degrees. So I guess they get a lot of rain and not too much sunshine there. But yeah, my dad, there's a picture of me, if I could show it to you sometime, where I have a Portland Beaver helmet on. So he played one season with the Portland Beavers, and so I wanted to mention that, and also the fact that a lot of the times when I share things about my dad and growing up, was basically because he was one of the first Mexican Americans that played professional baseball. I mean, you have Cubans, you have Venezuelans like Luis Aparicio, and you have other Dominican Republic players.
Right.
But as far as the Mexicans, I mean, there's not too many. There's Fernando Valenzuela, more recently, and my dad was probably one of the first. But the amazing story about him was that, like one day he shared this story with me where he couldn't go out and play baseball until he was done picking oranges and fruits and apples, and then he could go play baseball. And then when the White Sox wanted to sign him, my grandfather couldn't believe or comprehend that he was going to get paid to play a game. So he went ahead and pursued his dreams, and he signed with the White Sox right out of high school.
Well, and that's absolutely amazing. Trailblazers are important, and allergies. Sorry.
That's okay.
There are all these people that are trailblazers that don't always recognize, and we talk a lot about Jackie Robinson, the first black baseball player, but we don't have a lot of conversations about the second black baseball player, the challenges that they still faced, because that was only, I can't remember the name of the player, but it was only 3 months later that they were called.
Larry Doby, maybe.
I think you may be right. Yeah, that might be it. But he was only called up a few months later. He faced a lot of the same struggles that Jackie Robinson did.
Yeah.
When we look at what your dad would have faced, just because he wasn't black doesn't mean there wasn't racist ass people that were making him feel bad for not being the typical Mexican American. He was playing a game.
As a matter of fact, there were stories that my mom had shared with me where they were on a bus and my dad would have to take the food out to the black ball players on the bus. He'd carry them out of the restaurant, take them to the bus so they could eat on the bus. Yeah, and that was during the late 50s, right there. Yeah,
that's devastating.
Yeah,
I'm
sure he got to meet Satchel Paige and because Satchel did some time with the Indians towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
But my dad had some good friends. I mean, some amazing stories. He was good friends with Floyd Robinson of the White Sox.
Ooh.
He was good friends. Floyd Robinson.
No, I said O's, not O's.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Floyd Robinson and Chuck Hinton of the Indians and Mudcat Grant of the Indians.
Oh.
So all those guys were like good friends of his. When he used to go see him at spring training, they were talking like they were old high school buddies.
That's amazing. Celebrities are people too. That's always been an interesting point that I've tried to make. That I think some people forget. Like, your dad was a human. Just because he was a professional baseball player didn't mean he didn't have his struggles. Didn't mean everything was perfect for him. He got paid to play a game that he loved, but that doesn't mean that everything else was great.
They had to travel. Every 9 days they were on the road. 3 days per city. They might get a day off and they fly back on the long travel days. There was a lot of time spent away from home. So my mom was handling raising the kids basically. Right. So she had 4 or 5 kids, 4 during his career and 5 came later. But she had her hands full and she was she did a great job of doing that. Made sure that we ate and made sure that we were taken care of while he was on the road. And then he'd come and go. That was part of his career, So things changed a little bit when he got out of baseball and then he had to become a full-time dad and parent. But he did well. He got involved with city baseball. He coached a lot of us neighborhood kids. And like I said, he was gentle about his approach, but he was always right on the money. If he said throw it overhand, catch it with two hands, he didn't want any showboating, no showing off, no copycatting. He did it in a nice way where we knew what he meant. And he just said, I just want you guys to be you and do the best that you can, So that's how
that's a great way to approach it. I think it's and again, it just speaks to the impact that quality leadership has on young minds.
Yes.
That I think is a crucial thing that we need to put more emphasis on as a country, because I think long term the impact would be amazing.
Right.
But all right, so as we wrap up, I wanted to give you the opportunity, any final thoughts, anything that you want to share, promote. Of course, I'm going to put on the final video, I'll have, links for your Instagram and stuff like that so people can check out some of the videos you post about working out. Is there anything else that you would like to, share, anything else that's on your mind that you want to talk about today?
I wanted to add one more thing, Tony.
Okay.
One thing when I was younger, my dad never hesitated to drop the newspaper to play catch or whatever. There was times where, like nowadays, where we come home from work or we had a long day, and your kids ask you something, and it's like, hey, can I just take a little break and then we'll do this? But I don't remember one time that my dad put us on hold. He would put down the paper and say, let me see you take some swings, or let me see how you throw the ball. So that was one thing that I treasured, was he never really put us on hold when it came to wanting to spend time with us.
That's amazing, and I think that's a good thing that I think we sometimes forget. Yes, that taking that time for yourself is important, but as a kid, they don't have an understanding of that as well. And a lot of times we forget, just spending time with your kid can be a very relaxing thing.
Yes.
Yes, kids stress us out. Don't get me wrong. I've got a 12-year-old. It's part of the reason for my anxiety. But at the same time,
kids think the whole world revolves around them only. So Tony, if anything comes up, feel free to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
And also you can share any of the baseball pictures that I've shared.
Mike was muted. Operator error. Oh God, I need to get a professional. Somebody here needs to learn what the hell they're doing. I want to say a big thank you again to Michael for joining me. We recorded that on, I think it was Wednesday. And I was getting ready for work. It was great. Michael was absolutely fantastic. So, Craig, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Michael's going to be listening to this show later on. I talked to him earlier today.
I see he's watching now. He just commented a minute ago. He is watching
did he?
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, he owes me an apology because I was worried for him because he was worried that he didn't think he was going to come across that fine. Michael, my dear friend, you hit it out of the park, baseball speaking. Outstanding. And
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And to you, Tony, outstanding, great questions. And now you know why I keep telling Michael there's a book within him, within his heart, about his dad and growing up. And I keep trying to encourage him to write that book because it's in his heart. What we had today was what the conversations I had with Michael on the phone. It's just he's the most humble, genuine man that I've come across in a many long time, very long time.
I absolutely agree, and it was a great conversation with him, and he's always posting stuff in like in the White Sox group and stuff like that about just his dad, and it's amazing to see somebody that's doing amazing things and keeping the stories of baseball past and about his experiences, keeping those things alive, and books are a great way to preserve that, or like what we're doing with podcasting and video and stuff like that. I think there's value in that because, of course, not everybody is going to be interested in every detail, but there will definitely be individuals, and especially for the posterity of history, those things, it's good for them to be documented, I think. So I think that's absolutely fantastic.
I just love how he captures the spirit of his father, the spirit of baseball, and how they so intertwine with his growing up as a youth, and it can't help but touch your heart. I mean, there's a wonderful book in his heart. Michael, listen to me, Michael. Write that book, Michael. I love you. Write that book.
Michael, I do agree that there is definitely a book in you, with all of that information that you share. But I think Craig's just going for like a dedication, maybe a special thanks in the afterthought. He's just trying to get his name in there. But no, you're exactly right. There's a lot there that could be shared that has value. I agree.
Yeah. That was an outstanding interview. Good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know. If there's one thing I'm good at with my ADHD, it's talking. So I think that's one of the reasons I've gotten so comfortable with podcasts and stuff like that is it's been, it comes naturally to me. So I'm going to be sharing some stuff about season 3 for First Generation Dad. Stick around so you can listen to that. I'll play you back while I share my thing, and then we can talk after like normal. But before I transition to that, for you, was there any final thoughts that you had today? Anything else that you wanted to share this week?
I just think that it was so heartwarming that home run that the dad went crazy for. It's a great video. I am, as an old guy, I'm heartened by the youth that's coming on in baseball this year. The rookies that are stepping up to the plate,
absolutely,
and are performing on the biggest stage, and are doing so just fantastic. It's exciting as a baseball player, as a baseball fan, to see the youth. The future of baseball is in very good hands.
I agree.
Very good hands.
There is, and that's one of the things is there's so much young talent across not just one specific team, not just Gerard Encarnacion or Bobby Witt Jr. with the Royals or Nestor Cortez. There's so much young talent across the entire league. There's still some great guys in AA and AAA ball coming up that are going to be absolutely mind blowing. The MLB draft combine was Friday and Saturday, and I was looking, just a quick snippet when you talk about pitching. I know we kind of talked about this in our group chat. There was, the top 5 pitchers with the fastest velocities. They were at the combine. They had a guy that threw over 100, 18-year-old kid, Jacob Mizorowski, 100.7. There was one lefty in the top five, Connor Prelip, and I'm really impressed with that kid. Oh my goodness. What's great is there was, and Jacob and Connor both, along with a couple of the other guys, had some amazing spin rates on their breaking pitches, and the spin rates for the top 5 pitches for breaking ball pitches that were thrown during the workouts that were done on Friday for the pitchers, there was all top five of those pitches had over 2,800 RPMs. A couple of them were over $3,000. And the reason that number is important, they were talking about this on MLB Network. I didn't know this, but 2,800 and above is considered elite. And one of the reasons why is if you can get your breaking ball at 2,800 RPMs or above when you throw it, you end up seeing a batting average against that below the Mendoza line. It was 195 was the graphic that I saw. And I think that is a remarkable stat. To see some of these 18-year-old kids, some of these guys that are getting Tommy John before they get drafted, so that they're already ramping up and already through, like Connor Prewitt. He's already had Tommy Johns. So when we look at that 94, like he's still he's through most of his rehab, but he's still got some stuff to do. But he'll be ready by the time things come around. That's just after Tommy John. That's going to be a lefty throwing over 100 miles an hour by the time he gets to the majors. That's just ridiculous.
Yep, and I think we're going to see that the idea of a Tommy John surgery, not once but twice on a player, is going to become the norm for the elite pitchers down the road. I mean, it's not the scary career-ending, what it used to be. There's players that are going to have two of these surgeries and still be able to perform at a high level.
I could see that happening. And I think that, one of the things that we look at, and they were talking about this on MLB Network on Friday, is you get with the way that the rehab works for Tommy John, there's so much science that's gone into it. They have so much information for these guys right now that you do get to come back better, because in that year after you have the surgery, all you're doing is throwing, and you're just, and you build that back up. And that's why you come back better, because you just get that dedicated rehab time, and it does wonders when adding in what they do with the surgery. So I think that's absolutely great, and it's possible that we see two. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV, but I think that there's definitely some potential with that there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pull you back. Sit tight for just a second. We'll talk after.
Okay.
So for those of you that also follow my other page, First Generation Dad, the original plan was that this was going to be the start of season 3. After talking with Will, my co-host, things are going to be a bit different this year. For those of you that don't remember, that don't know, in my first season, I didn't do live videos. It was all just stuff that I recorded and edited myself. And this year is going to kind of transition back to that a little bit. This year, the entire main part of the season is going to be focused around a series that I did last year, a series of posts that I did last year called 30 Reasons to Live, where I talked about 30 different reasons why I'm thankful for not taking my life when I was suicidal in June of 2004. And I'm going to get all of those recorded into a series of episodes for the First Generation Dad Season 3 that will be out. My goal is mid-July, but hopefully within the next few weeks, because most of them aren't very long. I just have to take time to work everything out and get it recorded. And with that, I will be putting together the Spotify playlist with the music that goes along with each episode, because I will be doing that. And the whole goal of this is first just so we can have a more honest conversation about mental health and suicide. There is a mental health epidemic going on in this country. And my goal with First Generation Dad has always been about stimulating the conversation around mental health awareness, and more importantly, the issue of suicide, especially in men. 75% of all suicides are men. We see a lot of suicides are veterans. So there's a lot of good things that can come from us taking this step to have the conversation, and having these episodes is going to be about giving us the ability to, think about these things ourselves and find these reasons for ourselves, so we're more secure to work with our own suicidal ideation, or tools to talk to other people that, that may be struggling, or just to give them to listen to, so maybe they can find their own reasons. So that will be coming soon. Will and I are going to do different episodes this year, different points, when we have topics to talk about. But my main focus for this year is going to be that 30 Reasons to Live. So you actually get 30 episodes of First Generation Dad this year, but they'll all be 20, 30 minutes tops. So please be on the lookout for that. Continue to share and support not only First Generation Dad, but also the Winter Meetings podcast. You know, I love to talk baseball. Craig and usually Stefan's with me. We're going to continue to have special guests as we build this show up. And also feedback from all of you in any of these topics, whether it be baseball, mental health, parenting, stuff like that. Please send those over, because that's how we get better. And we get an idea of the things that you want to see, that you want to hear, so that we can create something that people enjoy. And you know, talk about baseball, talk about how to make ourselves better. That's my goal. So please let me know. Send me messages through either of those pages on how we can improve the experience of the Winter Meetings podcast, as well as First Generation Dad, because we want to be able to continue to provide content that you enjoy. You know, and as I wrap up tonight, I want to say a big special thank you to Will Morgan, who's my co-host for First Generation Dad. He will be around still. He is a great person. He has a lot of great insight. And then, of course, Craig Newton, Stephen Weaver, my co-hosts for the Winter Meetings. You guys are amazing. And the Winter Meetings would not happen without you guys supporting me. Yes, I can talk a bunch on my own, but I really don't like it. And having those other people around, really, not only does it give everybody something to actually enjoy, but also it helps make me better. So for all of you that are watching, and those of you that catch it after and listen on the various platforms, including Spotify and iHeartRadio, along with Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, thank you for your continued support. Please like and share our content. And thank you for joining us on this week's episode of First Generation Dad, as well as the Winter Meetings. We will see you next week for the Winter Meetings. Have a good night.